Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Harkleroad-Adams channel here on YouTube. We are talking about the 2020 NFL season playoff preview, and I am your host, Drew Hare, with our analysts, Chris Adams and Matt Harkleroad. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
How you doing?
Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone's safe. Everyone staying home, wearing your mask, everything you need to do to stay healthy and stay safe in 2021. But let's go ahead and shift gears and let's talk football. All of the games in the regular season have been played somehow without having a week 7 or week 18 to be brought into the forefront. And now we are ready to talk playoffs. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the NFC games, then we'll go into the AFC games, kind of give our thoughts and predictions all the way through respective conference championship games. We'll save the Super Bowl predictions for another time, but we'll go through those. We'll go through our regular season superlatives and talk about coaching carousel and anything else our analysts want to talk about. But let's go ahead and start with the NFC. I'm going to go game by game for the first super wild card weekend games, and then we can kind of go in through, talk about some of the teams and just take it from there. So Chris, I wanted your thoughts about obviously the game that everybody's looking forward to, Tampa Bay versus the Washington football team. Chris, I'll start with you about what your thoughts and what you're seeing from both these teams.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, I guess the ultimate trends this season was the NFC East ended up being just as bad as we thought it was. I know in our last video, we were talking about, some of those teams are playing better. The Giants had a little hot streak there. I think Matt even as far as suggests that there might be 2 NFC East teams in the playoffs. That didn't happen. All the teams kind of fell off. Washington limps in at 7-9, which has happened before. So wouldn't be the historic levels of futility had a 6-10 team made the playoffs. But, they have a good defense going up against Brady. That their front four with Chase Young and company, they should be able to get some pressure on Brady, which that is the way to beat him. But again, it's Tom Brady. It's the playoffs. Washington just doesn't have enough offense to compete. I think it'll be closer than some people might think. I think Tampa might be scared a little bit if you're a Bucs fan into the fourth quarter, but I think Brady and Arians and company will pull that one out and ultimately win by probably like 10 or 14 points.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a fair assessment. I mean, first let's talk. This is going to be like the worst clashing jersey combination in a playoff game ever. But yeah. I think the only way the Washington really has a chance is if Chase Young can really disturb Brady and what he does. He has been the best defensive player in the league for the last 4 weeks or so, consistently putting up huge games and doing big things in big moments. I think that's ultimately it. But if you really break it down, the defense on Tampa is not the worst. And I know Alex Smith is, the comeback player of the year, best story with him and Rivera, the best story. But unfortunately, I think that story probably ends here and it probably goes out with a whimper more than a bang. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the only chance they have is if Brady has an awful day because he's being harassed by Chase Young all day.
I will say though that, sorry, Drew. I will say that, Washington is probably the only NFC East team that could have had a chance to beat Brady in this game because of the pass rush that they bring. If it was the Giants or, Dallas, we would be looking at probably a 30-point victory.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much Alex Smith actually does play. He's still nursing that injury, and whether we know, Taylor Heineke, we don't know much about him. I wonder if Tampa Bay does. I mean, we've seen stranger things. I don't remember I think the Seahawks were the last 7-9 team to make it to the playoffs. And I think that was Beastquake when they beat the Saints, almost 12 years ago, something like that, 12, 13 years. Yeah. So, we've seen stranger things and the year impacted by COVID and so many other things. Maybe we'll see something else strange happen. Who knows? All right, let's go ahead and shift gears. Let's talk about the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. These two teams played, 15-13 game like 2 or 3 weeks ago. You expect to be kind of a low scoring, kind of grinded out game, Matt. Is that how you're seeing it, or do you think there might be some fireworks?
No, I think that's right. I think, both of these offenses were better earlier in the season than they are right now. Both of these defenses somehow the Seattle defense has turned itself around. They're actually playing pretty good defense lately, which, at the beginning of the season, we were talking about historically bad defensive season from the Seahawks up there, with the Dallas teams from a couple years ago. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And these are two really good game planning type coaches. So it'll be interesting to see what they come out in. I mean, this one, if you had asked me 4 weeks ago, I'd say the Rams walk away with this one. But now Seattle seems to be on the up, seems to be surging. I don't know what the hell's going on in the Rams offense. It does not look good. Goff hasn't looked good. Well, they didn't even have him last game, right? So, so I don't, and they won that game, which is crazy because they haven't been playing. They lost the Jets, that's just is like, I'm not sure, but I'm going to say Seattle wins by 10, just because I just think they're on the way up and this Rams offense looks bad.
Yep. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, this one's hard. It's hard for me to get a read on this one. I echo everything that Matt said. And I'm not totally sure what Goff's health status is going into this game. If he's going to play, or even if he's it'll be at 100%. Assume he's going to play. But yeah, he's been slumping, but he is an inconsistent quarterback, but he does have the capability of getting hot. The Rams defense is very good. With Donald and Ramsey. I'm really looking forward to the Ramsey DK Metcalf matchup, but I kind of lean also with Matt in this, and that I think Seattle is, they had that awful game against the Giants a few weeks ago. And then they've sort of righted their season a little bit since then. Russ is playing pretty well, and, Russ is playoff tested. So, when in doubt, go with a guy like that. So yeah, I think the Rams, maybe, I think Matt said 10 points, or the Rams, sorry, Seahawks. Matt said 10 points. I think that's about right. I think it's maybe one of those games that the Rams are never out of it, but they're never really in it either. Always the lead fluctuates between 7 and 13 points consistently the game throughout it. And maybe they end up winning by like 9 or 10.
Yeah, because I think Goff is officially questionable because this is one of the Saturday games, and so we don't know if it's going to be John Wolford or.
And I was going to say, if Goff doesn't play, then Seattle's going to roll. But.
All right, let's move on. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the last NFC game of the Super Wildcard weekend. It's going to be the Chicago Bears against the New Orleans Saints. Boy, that I think we talked about the Bears could sneak into the playoffs when we talked a couple of years ago. They were fighting for that potential last playoff spot. I don't think that we really expected them to really take it, especially coming in at 8-8. But Chris, do you see any potential for a Chicago upset this weekend?
I do not. New Orleans was the team that I picked the Super Bowl. I think they're clearly the better team here. Drew Brees is now, I think he's had a couple weeks since the injury, so he's fully healthy. He's at home in the dome. Still really has a really good roster, despite some injury concerns on that. But I just don't see. The Bears have been playing better. Mitch Trubisky has actually has been playing pretty well, and I think he's going to make the Bears have to make some difficult decisions this offseason. But New Orleans is the better team, and I expect them to win.
Yeah, I think for me, this is the clearest cut game out of the slate that we have. Yes, it's an NFL game in the playoffs and anything can happen. But this one seems like the surest deal. If you made me bet on games, I would never do that. But if you made me bet on games, and I had to bet on one this weekend, this is the one I'm betting on, especially if I can just take the Saints to win. But ultimately, we know enough about what Drew Brees can do and what that team is capable of doing. And I just don't think offensively or defensively that Bears team has enough weaponry to counteract any of it, offensively or defensively. You just look at it on paper and you're not seeing like one glaring thing that, this matchup's a real matchup problem for New Orleans. And there just isn't one of those here. They they're so creative. So any kind of like, weird pressure that you'd be getting from linebackers and things that, maybe you don't see from every team, they've got ways around it because even if Drew Brees isn't playing really well, they've got other options. They could, put Taysom Hill in and he can, change a game completely. I just think this team is too good and the Bears are too mediocre for this to be much of a game.
Yeah, and you've got to think that Kamara being back and having this game be on Sunday to allow Kamara to get back, that's huge for them, because if they were, the Saturday 4:40 game, this is a completely different game without Kamara. So I was hoping he's back, he's healthy, and he is Alvin Kamara, not 75% version of him. Chris, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, well, yeah, the Saints may very well have a heartbreaking loss in these playoffs, but it's not going to be this week.
Yeah, fair enough. Assuming health, assuming that, we're not going to see any crazy situations where, 10 players off of one of these teams is out for COVID and we don't find out until 90 minutes before, kickoff or anything like that. As we kind of shifted into the big picture of the NFC, assuming health, assuming nothing crazy COVID related, who do you guys, which of the matchups are you guys expecting to see, in that NFL or that NFC conference championship game? Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, so New Orleans was my preseason Super Bowl pick for the last 3 years. And certainly they could do it, but I've been really high on the Packers the last 2 weeks. Earlier this year, they've had a really good season all year, but in the last few weeks, they've really shown they've taken that next step. I was a little worried earlier that maybe they didn't have enough horses, but how Pittsburgh used to have the killer bees. With Green Bay has the awesome A's between Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Jair Alexander. They, and then enough other supporting players, with Rodgers having arguably one of his best seasons ever, and having the home field advantage is going to be crucial, because to win the Super Bowl, a team's going to have to go to Lambeau in January. And I don't think where Drew Brees is in his career right now, he's going to be able to do that. New Orleans' only chance, though, I think would be if Green Bay and Tampa Bay meet in the divisional round. Brady goes up there into Lambeau. He's the one quarterback, maybe Russ, but the one quarterback who's capable of going in there and outdueling Rodgers in that weather. So if Tampa Bay were to pull that upset, and then that would flip and have a potential championship game in New Orleans, presuming New Orleans continue to win out, then I like the Saints' chances a lot more. But if that doesn't happen, I think I think the Packers are the smart money pick.
Yeah, I think the Packers look like the most well-rounded team that's out there right now. But I do think Seattle's on the come up, and they have been playing much better ball lately. That defense, again, starts to look scary when you put Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams out there on the field. And once those guys came back or got there, depending on which guy you're talking about, that defense has changed. And I think they're a lot scarier than people give credit for them at this point. And it's the offense kind of in Seattle that's been a little lackluster lately. I think that team could definitely give the Packers a run for their money if that game was to happen. I think we already saw the Green Bay-Tampa Bay matchup this year. It wasn't that great. So I think, if our picks earlier hold true, that means Green Bay gets Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay gets, I think they don't have the talent that Green Bay does. Green Bay gets that win. And I think New Orleans does have a tougher time going into that building than Seattle would. And so that game is really interesting to me, that Seattle, the potential Seattle New Orleans game is really interesting. And like I said, I would definitely take the Packers in that situation if it was for sure New Orleans, but Seattle scares me a little bit. But I'm with Chris. I think Green Bay is the best team in the NFC, and without any other knowledge, nothing weird going on, I think I have to take them at this point. But it wouldn't shock me if Seattle went there and won a close 33-30 game in Lambeau, assuming the weather's not horrendous.
Yep. And we've even seen that. Was it last year or the year before, where Green Bay came back and beat Seattle near the end? Yeah, I think that was last year. last year's playoffs. Yeah, that was a really good game, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it again. All right, let's kind of shift gears and let's switch over to the AFC side. Let's go ahead and start with Indianapolis and Buffalo. I think could be a really, really good game. It's definitely going to be an interesting game. But Matt, how do you see that playing out?
God, I think the Bills are the scariest team in the AFC that's not, being, I guess, not championed and piloted by Mahomes. Like, right? So Mahomes adds a whole different level of scary to every team. But honestly, I don't think anybody's playing much better than the Bills are right now. And, I think, Indianapolis, their defense is okay at times. That offense has a real problem, but they've been a little better lately. They're really balanced offensively right now. And the fact that they can throw the ball to Hines is huge as well out of the backfield. But, I mean, man, does anybody in the league scare you from a matchup perspective more than what you have to do to contain Josh Allen at this point? I mean, he's terrifying. The way he is, his accuracy is at 70%, and he's able to tear you up if he has to on the ground. They kind of made him a pocket passer, but in the playoffs, all bets are off, and he will run any ball he has to. I mean, he's just as scary as as Mahomes to me, but Mahomes is scary in that like tactician way, and like where he can fit any ball in any window, and he's going to hit those passes. You have to play perfect to stop it. But I feel like even playing perfect against Allen, you're still guaranteed because he can find a way. And, one-on-one, if he's against a linebacker, I'm sorry for that linebacker. It's a tough position to be in. And so, I mean, to me, the Bills are outmatching Indianapolis in this game. Does Indianapolis have a defense that can possibly slow this team down? Yes. But my guess is that Bills probably win this game by 17. That's just where I'm at. And I just think that offense is bad at times, and it gets into lulls, and then they can't find their way out of it. And if that happens in this game, or they get behind by a touchdown, 2 touchdowns in the first half, there's no coming back for Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I don't think Indy's built for anything like that. But
right,
Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree. Watching the Colts this year, they've had a really nice year, but with their offense, and I think it comes down to Phillip Rivers. So there have been times this year where Phillip Rivers has looked like his old borderline Hall of Fame self. And then there have been some other times where he's looked like a 38-year-old with 9 kids. So would depend, and you could actually say that for a lot of the older quarterbacks, Breeze, Roethlisberger.
9 kids part or the 38-year-old part?
Not the 9 kids part.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
But the part about how sometimes they look like their old selves, and then sometimes they've looked their age this year.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is which Rivers is going to show up. Now, Jonathan Taylor has really come on this back half of the season. So that is an asset that could kind of help them win the time of possession. But yeah, I mean, like what Matt said, Buffalo is playing so well right now. The only knock on them going into last weekend was they hadn't really played a great schedule. They didn't really have a marquee win. It was beating Pittsburgh when they were at their lowest point of the season. But then they went out and played a good Miami team that needed to go to the playoffs, and Buffalo really didn't have anything to play for, and they just walloped them. They dropped 56 on them. So they're ready. They're playing with confidence. I think it might be a little closer than Matt says, but to kind of depending on what they get out of Rivers, I don't think this should be too much of a nail biter. Buffalo wins.
Let's just hope that that Josh Allen that was in that playoff game against Houston last year does not show up, and we see more of like the almost MVP level, and then hopefully that continues. Let's go ahead and shift gears. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. This is a rematch of last year's second round game where Baltimore just it was 14-2, and Tennessee just went in there and just ran it right down their throats. And Baltimore and Lamar Jackson just seemingly had no answer for them. Chris, are they going to have an answer for the Titans this year?
To me, this is the toughest game to pick. This might as well be a pick 'em. You could look at this 2 ways, right? You could look at on the one side is that Baltimore has been thinking about this game for a year. They've been focused. They're going to put everything they have into beating Tennessee. The other way to look at that is Tennessee might be in their heads. Not only did they beat them last year, they beat them in the regular season. when they met this year, when Derrick Henry did the same damn thing he did in the playoff last year. Had that like 30-yard run to win it in overtime. So it could go ways. I mean, Baltimore has been playing really, really well the last few weeks, but they haven't really played anybody. Earlier in the season when they were kind of down, they had hit a tough schedule, and then they had a light schedule this back end. The only above 500 team they've played in the last month was Cleveland, and that was a nail biter down to the end. So this was tough for me to pick. But I'll go Tennessee, although I don't feel super confident about that.
Yeah, I'm with Chris. This is to me, if I wasn't a Browns fan, this would be the game I was most excited about going into watching this playoff. I think this, and also I'm really interested to watch that Tampa Washington game as well. But just because a slight chance. But this one though it's got all the markings of a great playoff matchup. You've got the grudge match. You've got different styles of running teams that run the ball a lot, but in different ways. They bottled up Lamar last year. Can they do that now? The guy had another 1,000-yard rushing season. It's not like, and they've got Dobbins, who's kind of come on at this point. I just feel like they're really, really hot right now. So I give them the edge, but this game I think is going to be, I think it's going to be a great one. And I think, it's a hard one to pick because you can like put together scenarios that make a ton of sense that go either way. I bet you if computers were simming this game, you're going to get a 65, in that 60 range where one team's favored. It's not going to be like 75% is, Baltimore or whatever, because there's just too much talent on both of these teams. And, they both have their problems too. So, I wouldn't take either of these teams probably past this round. But at that same point, man, this is going to be a fun one. And I'm going to take Baltimore just because I think they're playing really well and they have that grudge match factor going for them. But if you can't stop Derrick Henry, you can't win. And they've proven before that they can't stop him. And we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be higher scoring than we might imagine because I don't think either of these defenses are great. And there's going to be so much running and weird plays and passes to open wide receivers because they're trying to load the box. It's going to be a really fun chess match between two pretty good head coaches too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. I didn't really have much more else to say. You guys said it well, and I'm certainly not going to make a pick for those two games in that game right now. But let's go ahead and move on to the Sunday night game, which is just continuing just to lose a little bit of luster with every waking moment between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, I think we've all been we were looking forward to this game. Obviously, you guys are both Browns fans. I am a hated Steelers fan on this broadcast, but at the same time, it just every time we hear news since Monday, since Tuesday, since Wednesday, it just continues to get worse for the Browns in terms of availability or injuries, and it just losing its luster just continues to happen. Where do you guys feel how this is going to happen? How this game is going to progress? Chris, what do you think?
So I want to talk about how this game would have been.
Okay.
For all the COVID announcements, because I think taking all those into consideration, you can really only pick it one way. But had the Browns had their full complement, this would I think had the makings of being an all-time classic. The Browns certainly have some flaws, mostly on the defensive side of the ball, but they also have a lot of elements that can add up to making a little run in the playoffs. Right. Mm-hmm. They have a great running game, a smart coach. They do not have a good defense, but they have some very good individual defensive players who are capable of making a big play. And they have a quarterback who can get hot and can play really well in a rhythm. So, those are some elements that could come into play. I think in the game last week, they had intentionally kept Nick Chubb's workload light. And even in that, he was running all over them. So I think, the plan for Cleveland is to go out there and deploy him and lots of Chubb all day long and kind of try to get out to a lead, some smart play action passes out of that. Try to put up points early and hang on for dear life. But I mean, with so many players being out, and Kevin Stefanski, the probable coach of the year, is going to be out for this game with COVID. So, as much as it pains me, I don't know how I can be a legit, honest picker and not pick the Steelers to win this one, unfortunately, with everything Cleveland has out.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Chris said. It's the most Cleveland thing that can possibly happen is 18 years of playoff utility, and you get there and I feel bad for Joel Bitonio having been on this team for 6 years now, and gets his chance to be in his first playoff game and gets COVID. It's just, and it seems like it's this snowball that's been going on in Cleveland has just been rolling, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the NFL has, convinced itself that there's no chance it can delay a game in the playoffs, which that's their right to do however they want to do it. But the more this goes on, right now, if you just look at the COVID list and the injury list, I mean, the Browns are down 6-7 starters at this point. Assuming some of those guys come back on Saturday, if they test positive, test negative, you get Ward back. But if you just take what's the list right now, that's a lot of starters and a lot of players that get significant minutes. And, I'm not going to tell the NFL that they should, delay a game or whatever. The Browns obviously weren't doing the things that they need to do to make, to get their players not transmitting this from one to another or whatever is happening. But it is a sad state of affairs. And I think, if the Browns were to pull this off, it will be like, it'll be that down 3-1 comeback. That'll be that moment that has to happen. And it's going to be that Baker Mayfield takes over and takes the reins for real in Cleveland and becomes a superstar. That's the only pathway they have to success. Either that or Nick Chubb goes for 300. Like, those are the two possible ways this goes, but I can't see, they're too good at coaching on the other side for them to let anybody get 300 yards rushing on them. Yeah, unfortunately, you got to take Steelers by 2 touchdowns at this point. Assuming if Ward comes back and you get him back, maybe that number drops to 10. I think at this point, if you're a betting person, there's no way you're taking the Browns at 7.5 points or whatever it is right now. It's just crazy. You're losing way too much talent.
Yeah, between the Bitonio being out and then obviously the Olivier Vernon injury, that is just huge, especially with the havoc he was essentially causing on that defense. Yeah, that's just terrible timing for everything over the last couple of
weeks. And then a good chunk of the coaching staff too, but also Bill Callahan, who probably would have been the first to take over. Right. The interim coach is also out. So,
is it Alex Van Pelt going to be calling plays? Is that confirmed?
Yeah, he's calling, and then Pfeiffer is doing Prefer.
The special teams coach is doing.
Yeah, Prefer, the special teams coach, is going to be head coaching. But I have full confidence those guys will be able to call a decent. There's no magic to calling football games. These guys, especially with the way that Stefanski and his staff call plays, that they're so analytics based that they know what they're doing. They know the plan. I don't think that's as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. But you lose Ronnie Harrison. You're losing wide receivers. You're losing, just go down the list of how many important players are not maybe going to be on this team. Again, and we won't even know if this is going to continue. Is this snowball still rolling? They had positive tests today. They get one safety back and trade out a cornerback, safety, whatever you call him at this point. And then you've got, Ward, potentially maybe doesn't play either. And it's just, God. And Myles Garrett has been a shell of his former self since he's come back from COVID. And it's just like everything has just stacked up on one side of the ledger. And it's, unfortunately for me, it's on your side of the ledger, Drew.
No, that's why they play the games, man. I mean, like I said, we've seen a lot of crazy things happen, and we'll see. You just don't. I mean, also at the same time, we don't know what Steelers offense is going to show up either. Like, is it going to be the one that showed up in the second half of that Indianapolis game, a couple weeks ago for the first time in a month, or is it going to be the one that looked like it was just stuck in neutral for the last couple of weeks, even against, the Washingtons and
the Bengals
and the Bengals? Yeah, exactly. So, as we kind of shift gears towards the rest of the AFC, you guys have your championship game predictions in place. Matt, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think this one's an interesting. I honestly, like I said before, I think the Bills are really scary, and so I ultimately I think it'll be Bills and the Bills and the Chiefs. Jeez, Matt is having a slippery brain moment. But yeah, Chiefs, and that's going to be. I think it's going to be a great game. It wouldn't shock me if the Bills came out of that one ahead, just because the Kansas City offense has looked a little weird lately. It hasn't. I mean, they've been winning games by 3 and 4 points. It's not been what you expect from them. Yes, they've been winning, but it just doesn't have that same feel that that the really scary Chiefs teams have had in the last couple of years. Just something's off, and I'm not sure what it is. But if it's the lack of a running game that's kind of there sometimes and not there other times, if that's the issue, and it wouldn't shock me if Le'Veon Bell becomes a bigger portion of this team at going in the playoffs, because they need some other element at this point. Yeah, I mean, so I guess, if you're asking me what my, official pick for the Super Bowl at this point is, I'll take the Bills at this point, just because they look scarier to me. They look like a better all-around team than the Chiefs do, but the Chiefs are good, and Mahomes is the X factor, and if he has a great game, nothing can stop him from winning. I think it'll be a great quarterback duel and a fun game. I think again, Pittsburgh and Baltimore have just too many problems for me. Baltimore is scarier, I think, than Pittsburgh has been lately. So, if that's the game over there, say it would be what the Ravens would go to the Chiefs in this scenario, and then the Bills and Pittsburgh play again. So I would say that, Mahomes and Allen are heading off in the pathway to a great AFC championship game.
Yeah. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say the same thing. It's funny. If Cleveland were to upset Pittsburgh and then play Kansas City, and then you would have Buffalo against Tennessee, Baltimore, I would actually think I might lean towards Tennessee or Baltimore. I guess I went with Tennessee, so I guess I would say them with a chance to upset Buffalo. But I don't see Pittsburgh doing it.
No.
So, and since I picked Pittsburgh to win, I obviously am going to say it's going to be Kansas City and Buffalo. But I am going to go with Kansas City. I mean, they were my AFC Super Bowl pick from the beginning. And before you say, oh, boring, Chris is just going chalk again. I do think Buffalo, Kansas City has the making for a great game, but as a great year as Josh Allen has had this year, I will still take Patrick Mahomes over him in a one-game scenario. So,
bold choice, Chris Adams, as usual. Before we kind of shift gears to superlatives, Tennessee made that surprise run to the AFC Championship game last year. Is there any team in either of these conferences that you think could, and I don't, just maybe just one team on either side? You guys don't have to, if there's somebody that's jumping out at you, could there be a Tennessee team that just makes a surprise run to a conference championship, and who would that be?
I think the Rams could do it. I mean, if the Rams offense starts to work, that team is scary as hell. They're not working right now, and I don't know what's the causation for that, but they've got everything they need if that offense starts to work. On the AFC side, maybe it's Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore can, if Lamar is as good as Lamar can be, like he was coming back in that game against the Browns, if he can be that guy, then there's a lot he can do just by himself. And that offense clicks in a way that very few offenses click when he's able to run the ball. And, they're getting also running game from their running backs, and they're, getting, dink and dunk passes and long shots down the field. If they can do that, that team's scary. It's just they're so inconsistent with that. But again, if you get hot like Tennessee got last year, then I think that's your team in the AFC.
Good. Chris, how about you? What do you think?
Don't laugh, but, had Cleveland been fully healthy, I could make an argument from them for the reason I had said before, how they have a lot of those elements of things that can go well. The quarterback who can get hot, the running game, the smart coach. But, again, now who knows if they can somehow beat Pittsburgh and then get all these people back, then maybe. But I guess, I'm tempted to say Tennessee again, just because, Derrick Henry in January, can totally control the game. And Tannehill has had a really, really nice year. I think he can, he's more than a game manager. Obviously they're a run first team, but he's not your traditional, just, hand off 3 times and throw the occasional pass and don't screw it up. He's got an arm. He's got the athletic ability to make plays outside of the pocket. So, he can provide you with the big play if you need it. Their defense has been pretty atrocious this year, though. So I don't know if this is quite the team that could do it. But I guess I'll say them in the AFC. In the NFC, that's a tough one. I guess maybe agree with Matt and the Rams. Sort of the same thing. If good Goff shows up and gives them enough offense for their defense to win. We talked about Seattle earlier, but I mean, Seattle is a division winner and the number 3 seed. So I don't think that would necessarily be a magical run if they made it. So yeah, I'll say like Rams or Titans.
Yep. I think that's fair. Yeah. And, I think the only other alternative in the NFC would have been the Bears. And I don't think anybody really wants to go out on that far of a limb. I appreciate that.
Hold on a second. Don't forget those, that football team. What's the name of that one? The one football team. That's right. I got it right.
The football team. That'd be very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be the craziest thing ever. I mean, and the best story maybe in football ever. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, while we've talked about the games that are going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, let's go ahead and look back at the last 17 weeks of the year. And let's go ahead and talk about our regular season superlatives. We're going to jump right on in. We're going to start with the MVP. Chris, we've mentioned a number of names for MVP, mostly quarterbacks over the last couple of weeks and the months. Who is going to be your 2020 NFL season MVP?
So I think, we've talked about mostly quarterbacks, but, we've seen Derrick Henry win over 2,000 yards, which is quite the impressive achievement. It's only been happened, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's not happened that many times in history. And often when running backs do hit the 2,000 yard, they have won the MVP. I know Adrian Peterson, I think, was the last one to do it. So I think he has really had a great year, and I think he has done enough to finish second in the MVP voting. But I think Aaron Rodgers is your winner. The fact that he has made arguably his best season at age 38 or whatever. I think it was 46 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, or something like 47 touchdowns. So really close to the 50 Mahomes had a couple years ago. And we always talk too about the MVP being about the narrative. And the narrative was that, Aaron Rodgers is in the downslope of his career. The Packers drafted his replacement. He's more of a game manager now. And he put all of that to rest going out this year with just going out and balling out. Mahomes had a very nice year, but I don't think Mahomes is almost a victim of his own success, I think, because he throws 50 touchdowns in his first year as a starter and then wins Super Bowl MVP in his second year. So I don't think that. I think Rodgers' season is going to outshine that. Deshaun Watson had a really, really nice year too, but his team's terrible, so he's not going to win. So I'm going to say, if you were going to ask me to do a voting, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers 1, Derrick Henry 2, Pat Mahomes 3, Josh Allen 4, Deshaun Watson 5. That would be my top 5 in voting.
Yeah, and you've been on the Aaron Rodgers train for a really long time. I mean, you were one of the first ones, like the midseason, like after week 4, week 5, really on him as like not necessarily a dark horse at that point because he's still Aaron Rodgers, but we were always talking about Russ and we were talking about Mahomes and what they were able to do. But yeah, I was just looking it up: 48 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
48, even better than I thought. Yeah,
insane numbers. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think on its face, if you say, hey, all these people are in black boxes, I look at their stats, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers is going to win this thing, right? But I think what becomes a little interesting is that if you take guys that might get some consideration and you put them together on what teams they're on, and you think, well, okay, Mahomes isn't this guy who's having another really great season in Travis Kelce, right? Maybe the best season of tight ends ever had or real damn close. Not okay. And then you look like, okay, well, who led the NFL in receiving yards? And you go, oh, that's Stephon Diggs. And this other guy also there is, having his best season ever, obviously, because he's not been in the league that long, and also a really amazing season on a great team. So you think, okay, so maybe Allen and Diggs take some votes away from each other, and maybe Kelsey's great year takes a little out of Mahomes. And then you look at Aaron Rodgers and you say, what's he got for him? Oh, he's only got a guy that caught 17 touchdowns this year, Davante Adams, who's arguably had the best season as a wide receiver as anybody, right? And maybe the number 1 wide receiver in the game right now, if you were breaking everything down. Sure, you can give Hops and Diggs some credit, but probably at the end of this year, you're going to say Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the game from what he did this year. Okay, so that leaves one guy on a team that's not going to take votes away. There's no going to be like, oh, was it Tannehill that was, the reason why Derrick Henry got 2,000 yards? No, that's not going to be the case. But I think you could make that argument a little bit. Ultimately, I think it'll be Aaron Rodgers. But I think there is a legitimate shot that Derrick Henry wins it this year. Just because I think quarterback play on a whole is so good from those top 3 guys, and maybe throw Watson in there too. But those 4 guys, that maybe they eat each other's votes a little bit, and then a guy like Derrick Henry can rise up and take the crown. I don't think anybody's walking away with this with historic percentages of getting the votes or anything. Yeah, I'll say Aaron Rodgers because I think he's the best quarterback in the game this year, and that's usually who it goes to. But I think Derrick Henry has a legit shot, not just a nice also ran performance.
I will add on to that, Matt. Like you mentioned, there's 4 quarterbacks there who had like MVP caliber seasons and may have won an MVP in other years. But if you look at if you're just looking at statistics, you look at the drop off from Aaron Rodgers down to Dalvin Cook, who has kind of had the second most rushing yards and probably had the second best running back. Did I say Aaron Rodgers? I meant Derrick Henry. Significant drop off. I mean, I'll say it again. Henry was over 2,000 yards. Dalvin was down at 1,500. Still a hell of a year. And then it kind of dropped off a little bit. I know Nick Chubb missed 4 games in there. Otherwise, he would probably be up there more. But really, there were only about like 9 or 10 running backs who were over 1,000 yards this year. Whereas quarterbacks, there were dozens who were had over like the 3,000 yard barrier. But like, I think it's, I do think if I was a voter, I would vote for Rodgers. But there's another argument for who had the best quarterback season between several guys, but there's no question about who had the best running back year this year.
Yeah, and we were talking like right after week 13, that Derrick Henry had a chance to get to 2,000 yards, but needed to average something like 175 yards. And I'll be damned, he did that. Like, that is an insane number. It's not like he had 1,800 yards after, with 2 or 3 games to go. That dude had to work and got it. It was incredible. Matt, right, that cut you off?
No. I agree completely with what you said. I mean, I did not think any of these guys would get there. And it's just a testament to A, the fact that they're willing to give that guy the ball so much, and B, the fact that 10-yard runs are, something he does literally numerous times in a game. And no reason not to keep passing, giving the ball to that guy when he's going to do that. And he works harder as the game goes on, and you just see him wear down defenses. And ultimately he's wearing down the whole NFL at this point. I mean, his first 8 games compared to his second 8 games, it's almost like that same, what his second half stats are compared to his first half. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And, more power to him. And, ultimately I'm rooting for the guy. I love it when somebody's not a quarterback that wins one of these things, especially a guy who, how many more 2,000-yard seasons does Derrick Henry have in him? I don't know, but it's probably not more than, chances than Aaron Rodgers has had to be MVP. So, or Mahomes will have to be MVP. So give it to the running back. Let's do it.
Right. As we kind of shift to offensive player of the year, that seems like, if he doesn't win MVP, that could be a good place for Derrick Henry to pick up an award. You guys.
Yeah, I think if Aaron Rodgers is going to be MVP, Derrick Henry as offensive player of the year makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. If Derrick Henry wants to win it and they didn't want to give it to him, I think it's either going to be Davante Adams or, I guess maybe Kelsey makes a lot of sense, even though he didn't end up getting the receiving title. Man, that's a hell of a year for a tight end. And you can make a case for Diggs too, but to me, if they don't give it to a quarterback afterwards, if they give the MVP to a quarterback, then it'll be Derrick Henry. And if they don't give it to, if they give it to Derrick Henry, hope it's a wide receiver or tight end. And I guess I'd go lean towards Kelsey just because it's an incredible season.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Let's switch to the other side of the ball for defensive player of the year. Who do you guys, either one of you jump out and throw out your prediction?
Go ahead. We're both going to say TJ Watt. So what does it matter, right?
I was actually going to say Aaron Donald. So,
okay. All right. Yeah. I think those are your two leaders in the clubhouse. I just think if you look at things that Chris Adams hates, which is advanced statistics, TJ Watt is leading in every advanced statistical category for edge rushers, and like some numbers that are ungodly big, like percentage win rates and things that are out of this world. So I think like if you were the guy that looks at those things, which yes, I am more than Chris is, that makes sense. If you're looking at it from a who wrecks your game plan more, it's obviously Aaron Donald, because he's a freak of nature and plays at a position where most teams don't really have to worry that much about the guy who's playing nose tackle, or defensive tackle, right? So I see it both ways. Aaron Donald's the best defensive player in football and has been for 4 years now. If you give it to the best defensive player, then it's Aaron Donald, and it'll be Aaron Donald until he stops being great. But to me, I think if you're saying who had the better season, TJ Watt probably had a better season.
You can't go wrong with either one of those. So
yeah. Yep. Sounds good. All right, let's move on to coach of the year. I think this is going to be a very interesting, because you can see this going a number of different ways. Do you give it to Stefanski for the Browns, to get them into the playoffs at 11-5? They looked just infinitely improved over Freddie Kitchens last year. Or are you going to go with, Ron Rivera in Washington? He, obviously dealing with cancer and everything else that has to come with that. And then obviously leading, Washington to, a division championship, albeit 7-9, but it's still a division championship. Or is it going to be somebody else? Chris, who are you thinking?
Well, I've already kind of tipped my hand earlier. I think it's Stefanski, and I actually don't think it's particularly close at this point. I would have thought Brian Flores could have was in the mix, but then the way that they just laid an egg in the last game of the season against the Bills like that took him out of it. Kansas City, they were 14-2, great season, but nothing historic there. You mentioned Ron Rivera. That's an awesome story. But again, it's the worst division in the history of football. And then I think it's Stefanski and Sean McDermott in my mind.
McDermott, yep.
A possible contender for that, but I would give it to Stefanski. Anytime you just ended an 18-year playoff out for a team. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. In your first year in, unprecedented times too. It's kind of an impressive resume when you put it all together. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be super upset if Rivera ended up getting in after what he's gone through, especially not even just, the cancer diagnosis, but that has been an awful place to be a head coach right now. You don't have a name. You had to fire your starting quarterback at week 14 because or week 15 because he couldn't pull himself together. And you're putting together a patchwork team of quarterbacks, and you've got maybe 2 offensive weapons that anybody else would want. And then, really it's just, it's ultimately, is anybody doing more with less? It's hard to say that they are, except that defense is really good and Chase Young is unbelievable.
Really good. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. But like I said, what Stefanski's done is majorly impressive, especially with what was left to him and left behind, and how he had to rebuild a program basically from the ground up using existing parts. It's kind of impressive. And, maybe, making Baker Mayfield a top 10 quarterback in this league is a huge step forward for him. So, yeah, I think it'll be Stefanski, but again, it wouldn't be super sad if Rivera won it.
And just the stability that Stefanski brings. Just last year was just such a train wreck. It's across so many different ways under Freddie Kitchens, and just they are a living, breathing NFL football team this year. They just are. And in terms of just a game plan, they are really well coached. They make the in-game adjustments, which obviously were lacking in the last couple of years. And he's really good. And I think he'll be really good for a really long time. Defensive rookie of the year, I think we can make this pretty quick. You guys both gonna say Chase Young at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
No questions there.
No questions. Yep. So, but I think there's a lot of questions for offensive rookie of the year. You guys could throw out any one of like 7, 8 different players at this point, and I would be like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds good. Chris, who's going to be one of those 7, 8 players?
I think it will ultimately come down to 2 guys, and that's Justin Herbert and Justin Jefferson. So 2 guys named Justin, I guess.
Justin's going to win this thing.
Yes.
Even just a J. If you could throw out Joe Burrow, Jonathan Taylor, there's just a lot of J's out there.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor came on a little bit too late to get noticed. Herbert threw 31 touchdown passes, so that he's probably going to get it. But Justin Jefferson had such a great year in that team. So on a team that really didn't have much go right for them this year, he would be my vote, but it's probably going to go to Herbert, which is fine.
Yeah,
J.K. Dobbins too, by the way.
Yeah, J.K. Oh, and what's his face down in the Jaguars too?
Oh, James Robinson.
Yeah,
James
so
Robinson,
somebody with a J name is going to win this thing.
Keep it going. Go ahead.
James Robinson had a really great season. We shouldn't gloss over that. That's an amazing season for a rookie running back and a team that has absolutely nothing.
Nobody else.
98% of the carries he had for them.
Yeah, just incredible season for a guy. So like, to me, if you're going out there and if you're breaking Baker Mayfield's record from last year, that's significantly less impressive than breaking Randy Moss's record for rookie receiving yards. So to me, it's just a fan of the game. I think we're watching. It's been a while since I saw an offensive rookie. I just look at him and be like, that's a superstar in this league. Like, that is a legit superstar. That guy makes catches, he makes plays that not a lot of guys currently in the NFL can make. And he's so good that in like week 14, he's yelling at his quarterback for bad balls. That's how good this guy is. No one gave him any crap for it because if you put it anywhere in my vicinity, I'm going to catch this thing. He's just, I think if you just take the wow factor and the fact that it's not, will a quarterback break Herbert's record next year for touchdown? Yes, probably. If it's not next year, it'll be the year after. It's not going to take. That's not a record that's going to live forever. Where this Justin Jefferson record might live for a long time because they're just. How long did this Randy Moss one live? That tells you something right there. Yeah. And so, to me, I give it to Jefferson. And I think again, he's going to be a legit superstar in this league.
And can I just throw in for a second there? Can you guys think of a trade that worked out so well for both teams?
No. Literally going to say that. Yeah. The digs for Jefferson, it's just perfect. And it all came down to Philadelphia taking Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. And it's a huge, that could potentially change those 2 franchises, for what Philadelphia's going through right now. But yeah, I think it worked out great for both of them. It's incredible. You never see that.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Well, speaking of Justin Herbert and his potential offensive rookie of the year candidacy, let's go ahead and shift gears to who his coach might be next year and talk about the coaching carousel. So the LA Chargers, after letting Anthony Lynn go earlier this week, are one of 6 teams that are out there currently without a head coach. The LA Chargers, the Houston Texans, Detroit Lions, New York Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Atlanta Falcons. Matt, I want to throw it to you first. What if you were a head coaching candidate, regardless of fit, but you want to just pick the best situation? Which team would you want to pick?
It's certainly the Chargers. I mean, that Chargers team, if you just look at talent wise, okay, let's check some boxes off of things you need. If you're, going to be a good franchise in the NFL today, great edge rusher. They have one of those. Check. Yes, they got one of those. Mm-hmm. They got a top tier wide receiver. Check. They got one of those. You have a maybe franchise leading quarterback. Check. They got mm-hmm. one of those. Do they, are there some problems that they need to fill out and fix? Sure, absolutely. I mean, they would have been in the playoffs and they wouldn't have had to fire their coach if there weren't. Mm-hmm. But if you just say, what are the the blue chip parts of an NFL franchise right now, and do they have a lot of those pieces? They do. Mm-hmm. And if you're going down this list of like what's the best job to worst job, you could make some arguments in the middle. You might say Atlanta's a good job, but I just think none of those players are going to be there. I think they're going to move on from a lot of those guys. I think they're going to move on from Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. And honestly, I don't know what's going to be left in that cupboard. Jacksonville almost seems like a better option. You're going to have the, presumptive, quarterback pick that they'll take and who is maybe the biggest name in quarterbacking coming out of college since Andrew Luck, if not even bigger. Because mm-hmm. the guy was hyped before he was, in 3rd grade, it feels like. We've been seeing, Trevor Lawrence's name as a future NFL player before he was even in college. So, mm-hmm. I think those are the 2 places I would want to go, and I would try to avoid the Jets and Detroit, I think, if I was being honest. I mean, I'd take any NFL coaching job if they want to hand one out to me, but and I feel like most guys feel that way too. Mm-hmm. In the NFL. But yeah, give me that Chargers job for sure. I can keep it. I'm not sure anybody can keep the Jets job.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Matt broke that down really, really well. And I think among all those teams there, you look at them and you say, okay, which of these teams was bad mostly because of the coach? And that probably is the Chargers. If you just look at the number of one of the reasons Lynn got fired was the number of games that they've lost by a touchdown or less in the last 2 years. And so it was some ridiculous number. I forget the exact stat on that, but they have a lot of the pieces parts. And I think the year that Herbert just delivered that nobody really expected, that solves that big piece right there. So yeah, I probably would tend to agree with that. I think a lot of it, I guess, beyond that kind of depends on the type of guy you are. Like if you are a veteran coach and you want to come in and win, then I think Atlanta is that job. I don't necessarily agree with Matt that they're cleaning house on players. They're not going to be there long-term, certainly. But if you want to come in and try to win right away, then that's probably your best fit for like a year or two. Jacksonville, if you want the opportunity to come in and start from scratch, and come in and be with the guy. And again, they've got some other picks. They've got cap room. They got Robinson, DJ Chark. So I probably would rank that 3rd. The Detroit is probably the worst job out there, just because the Lions they're just kind of like meh. Like, they're the team that's bad, but not bad enough to get the franchise-changing quarterback or other player. And you might just sort of be in purgatory there for a while. I don't think the Houston job is very good either. I mean, you look at that job, Deshaun Watson and nothing else. And there's some rumors starting to bubble up that Watson's not happy there. He had that cryptic tweet after they hired Caserio. So you would be going into a place there with a franchise quarterback, but and an aging Hall of Fame defensive end, and then just like nothing else. So I would almost say that's near the bottom, right there with that might be, I might even put that one behind the Jets. Although the Jets' job is not a good one, especially now that they don't have Trevor Lawrence coming.
Yeah, that's the Jets' job to me is just, there's no way to win. I just don't see a pathway that you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is the guy now for 10 years after this, because what do you do? Like, what's the pathway out of that hole? Like, maybe you gamble on a quarterback and he ends up being really good, but maybe, like, I don't know how you dig yourselves out of the hole that Adam Gase has managed to dig there. It's real bad. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd stay away from the Jets. Yeah, I agree with Chris. I don't want that Houston job really, except for it comes with maybe Deshaun Watson if you can convince him to stick around, and then it's a lot better of a job. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't have any draft picks coming. You know, they traded them all to Miami, so they don't even start picking to like the third round, I think.
Yeah, it's and I don't. Yeah, and I don't know what Detroit has to offer either. Like, there's nothing.
Like I said,
there.
They're just kind of meh.
Yeah, because Galladay might leave. You don't know what Stafford's going to be like. Maybe they have DeAndre Swift, but there's not much else beyond that.
So what does that even mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know that those three jobs seem real bad to me, and I think the Atlanta job could be really bad too, and I think it's trending in that direction by all accounts. I mean, Arthur Blank is basically saying that Ryan and Julio might not be back next year, and that's your owner. So so basically, it sounds like he's willing to start the rebuild, and starting the rebuild before you start to tank it's not the way you want to do this. So it's going to be a long road out of Atlanta. So it's going to be like it snowed there.
Are there any specific fits you guys are hoping to see? Like, where Eric Bieniemy might be able to go? Is there going to be? I mean, obviously we've heard the rumors about Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. That's necessarily high on the desirability list, at least for what I matches up. But is there a coaching potential that might just like really unlock like the Chargers or Falcons or any of these other teams that might really take them from?
I mean, it's so hard to evaluate coaching hires at this point. Like, a year ago, a lot of people were unsure about the Kevin Stefanski hire in Cleveland, myself included. And that's obviously turned out well. And there's not really one thing that makes a coach great, right? We've seen the best coordinators in the world fall flat on their faces. And we've seen, an unheralded quarterbacks coach named Andy Reid go into Philadelphia and turn that team around and then win a Super Bowl in Kansas City. So there's not necessarily one path. I do think Bieniemy is going somewhere. I think Robert Saleh from San Francisco is probably going to end up somewhere. Now, he is from Michigan, so there's some talk there that he might be a pick for the Lions. He was the runner-up for the Cleveland job last year. And depending on who you read, made the Stefanski hire pretty tough. I think, there's probably going to be a retread that's hired somewhere. I heard that the Jets interviewed Marvin Lewis the other day, which just was laughable.
Chargers interviewed Jason Garrett.
Yeah. So there's probably going to be something like that hired. There probably will be someone who looks to the college. I don't know if there will be a college house hired. I'm not buying the Urban Meyer to Jacksonville as of now. Who knows? I could be proven wrong. But yeah, and again, there's going to be some coordinator. Like last year, Joe Judge was on nobody's hiring radar. Got hired by the Giants and did a fairly decent job. So there's going to be someone like that too that nobody's thinking about right now. But I'm going to say Bieniemy for sure, and Saleh end up with coaching jobs.
Yeah, to me, if you're talking about fits, I think Bieniemy makes a ton of sense in Jacksonville or in LA. I think he's a proven guy that can work with a talented quarterback and do amazing things with them. It makes a ton of sense to me to go that direction if you're one of those two franchises. Odds are it'll be Jacksonville just because the NFL never seems to replace a African-American coach with another African-American coach. Evidently not allowed to do that. I think that's against the Rooney Rule or something because it never, ever happens. I don't think it's happened once. I think it would be a great move for the Chargers to go that direction. I think Bieniemy is going to be a great head coach, just by all accounts. He seems to be an offensive genius, if nothing else. to me, I think, I'm kind of hoping he ends up in Jacksonville and gets to build another quarterback up.
So a curious thing about Bieniemy too, though, I think most people agree he's the top name on the market this year. Again, the Urban Meyer thing, we're not considering that right now, but Bieniemy's the top name. Chiefs very likely are going to the Super Bowl. So if a bunch of teams are competing for his services, they're going to have to wait. So, is he going to tip his hand on where he wants to go, or is there going to be no movement in the coaching hires until the Super Bowl because everyone's waiting to see what he's going to do? So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that bears out.
Yeah, I think the NFL should really do something about that.
I agree 100%.
I feel like there's so much time. I mean, if you think that the two teams in the Super Bowl have to wait to prepare for next year until they finish the Super Bowl, why doesn't everybody else have to? What's the advantage of hiring a guy, 5 weeks ahead before before the Super Bowl has happened? To me, I just think you put in rules against that. If you want to hire a guy before week 17, you should be able to replace a coach if you fire him in week 3. I think that's fair. From anywhere you want, if that's what you want to do. But there shouldn't be guys that have to decide between, preparing for a football game in the playoffs and going to interview for a job. I just think it's bunk, and it's a bad system. You want all of these guys to do well to get higher up in organizations. And if you take the best ones, presumably the best ones are the ones coaching in the playoffs. It just, I don't know, it's an ugly system. It's an ugly look. And what the hell does it matter if you put a moratorium on interviewing coaches for 5 weeks? It's dumb.
I mean, college coaches do it all the time. They get hired before their bowl game and they coach their team in their bowl game, and then they go to their new job afterwards.
Agreed. And that should be banned too, I think. But in there, at least you could make an argument because there's big recruiting trips that happen between the end of the season and bowl game starts. Where you can't do anything else besides recruit. So I get that to some certain extent. You're not recruiting people in the NFL. That's not the way it works. What are you game planning for? You're building a draft board. I'm sorry, if you can't build a draft board in 3 months, you've got problems, especially when that's your full-time job and you're not doing anything else. So it's more likely to me that it happens in the NFL than college. But it probably should happen in both. Let's just say no one can can interview coaches until afterwards.
Oh, wait, man. Actually, wait, you're saying nobody can hire until after the Super Bowl. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying they should be able to hire these guys before, whenever they, or at least announce a hiring. If Eric Bieniemy, he just interviewed with the Jets. If they want to offer him the job and he wants to go there, the Jets should be able to make their hire and say Eric Bieniemy's our hire, but he's with the Kansas City Chiefs until the end of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I guess that's a conflict of interest, though. That's what I'm saying. Just let them, just put a moratorium on interviews until afterwards. What does it matter? Who cares? It's 5 weeks. Just wait 5 weeks and hire a coach. Don't interview anybody until the Super Bowl's over. That doesn't seem that hard.
I think we can both agree neither one of us like the current system.
Agreed.
Yeah, and by the time we meet again, whether it's going to be next week or in a couple of weeks, after the championship games or before the Super Bowl, that we might see some movement on the front across any of these coaching jobs. But as we finish up for tonight, any final parting thoughts from either of you guys? Anything we haven't covered? Anything you guys want to talk about?
We've talked a lot. A season unlike any other, and here's hoping for a good playoff run.
Yeah, I'm just hoping no more COVID blowups, and and that teams get to play on a fair playing field where the most of their players get to play. And unfortunately, we're in a situation with Cleveland where that doesn't seem to be the case. But it is what it is. I sound like a whiny Cleveland Browns fan at this point, but I just feel like there should have been more. They should have done more early in this, when they set up the season to allow for things like this to happen. If you have gotten through 17 weeks without an issue, then you just put an extra weekend before the playoffs start, and then none of this becomes an issue maybe. And they had the time, and they could have done any of that stuff they wanted to, and they didn't want to. So we're here still, and there'll be fun games. But as a Browns fan who waits a long time for this to happen, it's the most Browns thing that could ever happen. And
But it would be the most amazing win if they could pull it out on Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's that 3-1. It's a 3-1 deficit. If they end up pulling this off, it'll be the game people talk about for as long as people will talk about that. If it happens, and but yeah, I'm just hoping it doesn't happen to anybody else down the road here.
Yeah,
I just want good football. Yeah,
good football, clean football without like any major COVID or major injuries. And either way, it's gonna be a lot of fun over the next couple of weeks. So, all right, thanks to our analysts, Chris and Matt. You guys appreciate your time, and make sure to follow us on YouTube and look for us on Twitter as well for @Hark-Adams Sports on Twitter. Just follow us, subscribe, like us, and we will talk to you guys again soon. Enjoy the football, everyone.
Bye.